Good afternoon, everybody. This is Deanna Laird with Accounting Fly, and we have Andrew Argue with us again today from the Bean Counter. So, um, you know that this is going to be a great session from all the information that Andrew shares with us. And today we're going to talk about guaranteeing your public accounting promotion and really kind of the steps and the process that you can and should go through and how to set yourself up for success. So for those of you starting new jobs, maybe you just graduated, what a great topic, right? So get ready, get your notes out, and write down all this expertise that Andrew's going to share with you. As always, this session is being recorded, so don't worry too much if your hand doesn't go fast enough with his great advice. We'll send out the link of the recording in about a week, or within a week, let me say that. So you'll have that to reference back to. But anyway, glad you're here. If you graduate, congratulations. Terrific, amazing, and significant milestone. So I hope you're enjoying this really fun and exciting time of your life. For those of you not yet there, well, you will be soon. For those of you who maybe were there a few years ago, hopefully, you've found a lot of success, and maybe this webinar will keep you on a good path. So let me just go over a few housekeeping items as we typically do. But for those new with us, I always like to make sure that you know how to navigate your way around these webinars. One thing that's very important is we'd like to hear from you, even though you can't speak on the webinar, just because of so many people. We still want to hear what questions you have, and so there is a way for you to ask questions, and it's in the question panel through the webinar toolkit. It's usually on your right-hand side of your screen. So look at that question panel. You can type in the questions. I will monitor them throughout the webinar. We won't actually stop to answer those questions until the end of the session. So just don't be surprised that we don't get to it right away. But go ahead and type it in anytime you want to so that you don't forget about it, or it's kind of a way to be assured that we have your question captured, okay? If we run out of time, or if we hit the top of the hour, Andrew and I will probably continue to answer the remaining questions just so that we get the answers recorded. And again, you'll receive a link to the recording. So if you have to leave early, know that you'll be able to listen to the recording, skip to the end if all you want to do is hear the Q&A of your particular question, and it should be there, okay? Now, one other thing is around audio. If you run into some challenges with your audio and you're currently listening through your computer, usually that works just fine, but sometimes it doesn't, and a more reliable way is through your telephone. If you go into the audio section of the webinar panel, you'll see that there's an option for either telephone or mic and speakers. The default is mic and speakers, so you're probably listening through your computer right now. You can just click on telephone, the radio button, and then it will show a number that you can dial in, okay? So hopefully that's helpful if you run into problems throughout the session. All right? Okay, so we're going to get ready for Andrew. Again, the topic's about assuring your promotion in public accounting. And I know that he has something that's going to be really interesting for you to take advantage of that he'll talk about and also reveal a little bit later in the presentation. So make sure you stick around for the whole presentation to hear what everything he has to say, but also for a really interesting offer that he has. And so with that, Andrew, thanks again for being here. So excited to work with you again, and I'm going to hand it over to you.
Cool, thank you, Deanna. I appreciate it. Once again, everybody, please say thank you, Deanna, in that little chat window. You don't see it on the front of this, but I always say it takes a lot of work putting these things together. So thanks so much, Deanna, for having me on. And I'm excited. This is one of my favorite topics. And I don't get to talk as much about this as I do about a lot of the other topics. A lot of people want to know about how to find a job, how to get hired with some of the top accounting firms, and I spend so much time on that. But this is really my favorite topic. College is fun, but college takes a lot of time and college costs a lot of money. But when you get out there and you start working, I believe that's where the real fun begins. That's where the real opportunity begins. That's where the real exciting stuff happens, and you can really make whatever you want out of the future of your career. There's a tremendous amount of opportunity out there, whether you're going on a traditional track like we're going to talk about today, or you break out. So this is one of my favorite topics to talk about. Let's get right into it. We're going to talk about my story just so you can get a little bit of background with the kind of firm I went to when I was thinking about, okay, I want to get promoted. What was the landscape? Were there reviews, and how was that all working? I'm going to go through that a little bit. I'm going to talk about some myths about getting promoted in accounting, some things that I've learned, that I was told when I first started that just weren't true. We're going to go through a number of key strategies, and I'm going to detail out exactly what I think you need to do to not just get your promotion or give a shot at getting promoted, but to put everybody in a position where they're like, there's really nothing we can do. This person deserves to be promoted. They did everything we asked. We knew they wanted this. They've executed. Now it's just about giving them that title and giving them the money. And then the last thing we're going to talk about is getting credit, how you can actually get noticed for a lot of the things that I'm going to talk about doing. So, I worked at a Big Four firm. I worked at PwC, and I did a summer leadership, an internship, and a full-time job. That helped a lot because when I finally started my full-time job, I already knew a lot about the firm. I knew a lot of the people. I knew a lot of the technology and all that stuff. That was a huge help. Just because you can go through that doesn't mean you can't get promoted or can't get promoted early, but it helps, and it helps you understand where I'm coming from when I went through all this. At the firm, there was a requirement that every single job you worked on that was 80 hours or more, you had written feedback. So somebody would actually go through and write out, oh, Andrew did really great on this, really great on this. He needs to work on this. I tell you this because not every firm does that. And, depending on the landscape you're in, you're going to have to tailor this for your particular situation. A lot of these rules and principles we're going to talk about today, they're going to be the same in private accounting or a private company as they are in public accounting, but you might not have as stringent of a feedback policy with all this written stuff. We also had annual feedback where all of the managers and partners would get into a room for a day or 2 days, and they would literally take out all of those written feedbacks, start reading them off, and go through every single person. And then they would rank those people on a scale from 1 to 5. 1 being, absolute superstar, 5 being, we need to kick this person out of the firm. They're going to most likely be fired. I think 5 was kind of like a precursor to, yeah, we're just going to sit down and fire them. But, you could get a 4 and stay at the firm, and that would be soul crushing. And you also had to pass the CPA in order to get any promotion. And so I'm going through and telling you this because yours might be a little bit different. That's not going to change the overall picture of what we're talking about today, but there are going to be some slight differences. So if I give some advice and you're like, well, that doesn't really apply to me because we don't have written feedback as much as he did, it's okay. Stick with the rest of this and go forward. And also at my firm, it was 3 years, you're an associate, 3 years, you're a senior, 3 years, you're a manager, and then you're basically a senior manager until someone decides, yeah, we need a partner. And that could go on for 3 years. It could go on for 2 years. It could go on for 10 years. And sometimes they really just string people along until they quit, which is unfortunate, but it definitely does happen. When I first saw this, I was really disappointed because when I started at my firm, I thought everybody got promoted to senior associate in 2 years. And that's what it's like at the other Big Four firms, and that's honestly what it's like at most public accounting firms. And so for me, I got really wrapped up in this idea of getting promoted because everybody told me early promotion is not allowed. You cannot skip through this process. It's not allowed. It used to happen before 2008, but since then the economy's worse, and there's really no need to promote people more quickly because there's not as much, demand from the employees in terms of, we have so many employees that we can pick from, and there's just not a need to really rush people through the system. And I wasn't happy with that because I didn't realize it was going to be 3 years. I was like, why would I wait an extra year to get this new title and then have all of the opportunities that are available to me for other jobs and opportunities, to lead engagements at the firm, so on and so forth. So this became a big deal in my mind. And just to talk a little bit about my results, and then we're going to talk about how I got there. The first year, I ended up getting a 1 rating, and that was on that 1 through 5 scale. only, I think, 3 to 4% of the people at the firm would get a 1 rating. It was kind of like a normal distribution curve, you know, those old curves they would show with, you know, a few people on the far left, and then everybody sort of in that 3 area, and then a few people, you know, that got fired. And I also got a 10% raise, and I got about a 5% of bonuses. They were sort of staggered throughout the year, but about 5% of my salary I got in bonuses. The second year, I also got a 1 rating, and I got a 19% raise and a 6% bonus, and I was promoted a year early. So even though everybody was like, oh yeah, that's not allowed, this company doesn't promote people in 2 years, it's 3 years to promotion, I got promoted a year early. And so I'm going to talk about dealing with that too. Just because people say, oh yeah, this is the normal trajectory and timeline, screw that. You know, that should be something that you understand. So when you're talking to people, you're able to communicate with them in an appropriate manner and not just assume you're going to get this promotion. But just because people say it takes a certain amount of time does not mean it has to take a certain amount of time for you. And some of the myths that I was told when I first went through this and wanted to get promoted and really put it at the top of my list was that, you know, you had to work a ton of hours. The people that got promoted, they literally worked twice as many hours as everybody else. You know, oh, that guy got promoted because his dad is a partner. Or, you know what, nobody really knows. It was just luck. He just happened to get promoted early. You know, he passed the CPA exam, so he got promoted early. Or that person's been here for the certain amount of time, and so they got promoted. I don't believe that any of these are the reasons that people get promoted. I think they're the reasons some people get promoted, but most of you, if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably not falling into this situation. You're probably someone that has to work for what you get in life. You're probably someone that has to actually get out there, learn new skills, learn new ideas, implement them in your own life, in your own job to try and be better. You don't have a dad who's a partner that's going to try and promote you. Or you don't want to wait around for 3 or 4 years to get promoted. You want to have it happen now, and you want to do whatever you can to put people in a position where they give you what you want. And that's exactly what we're going to go through right now. The truth of this situation is that a detailed plan of action is the way you get promoted. And that's the way you get promoted early. That's the way you get promoted on time. If you want to ensure that it's in your control and that you're not just at the whim of the partners of the company, you need to have a detailed action plan. You need to build personal relationships. The most important thing when you're getting promoted is there has to be a consensus about you. So let's say your name is Brianna. Well, if nobody at the firm knows Brianna, but the 5 or 6 people that worked with you, they know you, they like you, they're really happy with you, when they go in to decide who gets promoted and there's 45 people in the room, and the 5 people that are like, yeah, we love Brianna, but the 40 other people in the room are like, who the heck is Brianna? Nobody's ever heard of what Brianna? I've never even seen this person at any events. I've never met them. I've never seen anything about them. It's really unlikely that you're going to get promoted. So you have to build personal relationships with everyone, as many people as you can at the firm. Obviously, there's going to be people that are left out. You know, some people never even come in the office or anything. But you really need to meet as many people as possible to put them in a position where they're not going to be able to say no to you. You have to have high ratings, and we're going to talk about how to guarantee that you get high ratings as we go through this slide, and as we go through these slides. And you also have to have what I call extracurriculars, and I just call it that because that's kind of what it was called in college. But when you get hired to do a job, right? And they want you to come in and they want you to do the audit work, they want you to do the tax work, they want you to do the consulting work. That's great, but guess what? Everybody does that, and everybody collects a paycheck for that. But what are you doing that's above and beyond what is just required on your job? And that is the way you guarantee promotion. That's the way you get early promoted. That's the way you ensure that it's going to happen. That's the way you get ratings above everybody else. Is you get high ratings on your basic client service, and then you have all this extra icing on the cake on top of it that's like, wow, I mean, nobody else did any of this. This person got great ratings, and on top of all that, they were incredible at all these extracurricular activities, helped growing the firm, building the firm, doing all these events, and we're going to go through a ton of examples in a little bit. How could we not promote them? Nobody else is even coming close to this. And that's really what it was like when I was in my situation. There was just nobody else that put together a presentation like what I put together. And look, I think this is important. A lot of people used to say, oh, Andrew, you got your whole life ahead of you. You don't need to worry so much about getting promoted. And I think all that's just a bunch of hooey. I wanted a higher salary. I wanted a higher bonus. I wanted more autonomy. I wanted to be able to run my own clients, run my own job. I wanted my own staff. I didn't want to work for somebody else for another year. it's a lot more fun when you're promoted. It's a lot more fun when you're promoted and you're one of the top people at the firm, because everybody is hitting you up for opportunities. New proposal, we're going to take everybody out before we do this big presentation to a prospective client. We're going to stay at the Donald Trump Hotel. And we did that, and we went and we all played golf together as an engagement team before we went up to do the client presentation. I mean, that was really cool. So there's a lot of opportunities available. We did a photo shoot where we all dressed up in the clothes of the client. The client was sort of a clothing manufacturer, and we all dressed up in those clothes, and we took these really like ritzy, model photos. I mean, some of them were ridiculous, but that was something that I did as an auditor. Okay, I'm a guy who's supposed to be crunching out Excel, right? But I'm doing a photo shoot for like 6 hours one day. And there's just all these little tiny experiences that you have when you're someone that's actually taking control of your job and situation and putting people in a position where they can't deny you're at the top of the barrel. Yeah, like I said, I worked on a Fortune 100 client. I was on a proposal for a client that was a Fortune 1000 company, tons of leadership opportunities. And if you're one of those people that's like, Andrew, I got to work abroad. Like I want to go to Australia. I want to go to China. I want to go to Latin America. I want to go to Europe, London. I want to do that with this firm. Well, it's tough. But if you're one of these people and you say, hey, this is my goal, this is what I want to do, it's very hard for people to say no. If you're one of those mediocre people, it's kind of like, we don't really want everybody else to know about you because we don't want you to represent our office. But then again, you're kind of good, so we don't want to let go of you because we want you to get our work done. But if you're one of the cream of the crop, the people that are high up in the firm, the ones that make decisions, the managing partners, the partners that are, the partner of the whole state, the whole region, they're going to see you and they're going to think, I want to keep this person around for the long run. I want to send them out for all these amazing opportunities. And there are so many international assignments for people that are on the fast track. Now we're going to talk a little bit about some of the strategies that you need to go through. And the general rule of thumb is that you need to do what other people aren't doing. There are some people that will be like, hey, Andrew, you don't need to do all that. You don't need to get up every day at 7:30 and get in the office before everybody else to get promoted. I got promoted and I didn't do that. I'm like, yeah, but did you also get a 1 rating every year you were at the firm? Did you also get the highest bonus, the highest raise? Did you also have the opportunity to be on all this extra stuff? Look, I don't care. If you don't want to do anything in this podcast, in this webinar, you don't have to. You don't have to do anything in here. But if you put these things into action, you will have better opportunities available to you. You will make higher pay. But everything in here is not very many people do this. I mean, the few people that do it, they're going to be competitive and they're going to be with you, but there's really not that many of them. I mean, out of 100 people that work at these firms, I mean, there's literally 2 or 3 people that are going to actually go through and do what I say in this webinar. So if you're one of those people and you're ready to put pen to paper and you're ready to take action, you're going to really stand out. There's not going to be a lot of competition at this level. If you put this into action, you're really not going to be leaving it up to chance. And that was my big thing. I didn't want it to be like, oh no, am I going to get promoted? And while I was still nervous leading up, I mean, everybody was like, Andrew, it's no big deal. Like, you obviously deserved it. Like, it totally happened. And looking back, it was so clear that I was going to get promoted. I still felt nervous going in, but I put myself in a position where, like I said, they could not say no based on all the things that I did. So we're not trying to just leave it up to chance, like, oh, if I do some of these things, maybe I'll get promoted. No. I want you to put this in motion thinking, I'm going to get promoted. I'm going to do these steps, and by the end of this, I can legitimately say, I'm not going to be a whiner, I'm not going to be an entitled individual, but I can genuinely say that I deserve this based on my actions and based on the work that I've done. And the worst case scenario is, you'll get the raise and the bonus, but not the promotion. And that does happen sometimes. Because 95% of this whole game of you being successful at work, you being promoted, you getting a higher position, you getting higher pay, you maybe running the company, 95% of that has to do with you. There is a very small percentage that is, it's not in your control. Like, for example, in 2008, the whole, economy comes to a grinding halt, everybody's freaking out, people's hair is on fire. When that happened, it was probably pretty hard to get promoted that year. And even if you were a complete superstar and a rock star, I could see them saying, we're not promoting anybody early this year. That's the 5%. But that never happens. I mean, it's very rare. You have to be in a very unique set of circumstances to fall into that one promotion year, into that one bucket where you happen to not get promoted. Almost none of you, I'm just going to say it right now, none of you are going to fall into that category. If you put this into action, you have 95%, maybe even more, that's within your control that will affect the decision that will be made by the company. And the good news about this is, hey, you can actually do it. You know, if I came here and I told you, it's really not up to you, you have to think about the company policies and what they say, and oh, they say you can't get promoted early, so you can't get promoted early. Well, that sucks. And if you had that idea in your mind, and if I came in here and I told you that, then you might think, well, why even work hard for it? Why even put all this into action when it's not going to happen anyway, or I don't know if it's going to happen anyway? I don't believe that. I think if you put this stuff into action, it's totally within your control. I don't care what the company policy is. I don't care what they've done in the past. You can be the outlier, and you can be the exception. And that's really what it comes down to is, are you going to be the exception, or are you going to be the general rule? Okay, so we're going to go through some of these key strategies, and some of these are tiny. Some of these are very tiny things that when you do them 25 times over the course of a year, they make a huge freaking difference. And the first one is, I want you to walk around the office at least once a week. And I would do this typically on Fridays, because on Fridays, everybody's just shooting the shit. I mean, pretty much nobody works past 10:30 in the morning on Fridays. You know, and so you walk around the office and you just make conversation with people. You start with people maybe that you know, and you just ask them, hey, we got any plans for the weekend? You ask them maybe about a little piece of work that you had to follow up on. You didn't even really have to follow up on. You could have sent them a little chat message, but you need to get out of your chair. You need to go talk to them face to face. And then you need to get into what's going on in their life. And it doesn't need to be an hour. I mean, these conversations could be 5 or 10 minutes. But once you start to do this, you're going to know that some guy or some woman has a kid that's, you know, just starting out in first grade. You're going to know that there's someone who is on their last section of the CPA exam. You're going to know there's someone that's getting engaged or is planning out the engagement and is really nervous about it, and it's going to be at the beach and they don't know. And they're going to be the person that a month later, they're going to have call you into the office and show you all the photos. And that is going to be a relationship. And you're going to mean something to that person. And to be honest, when I did a lot of this, I mean, I just started working, right? I didn't know what I was doing. I wasn't like, oh, I'm going to go talk to this guy about his engagement and hopefully see his engagement photos so that way I can get promoted. I'm not telling you to do that. I'm not trying to tell you to be a skis ball. I'm trying to tell you to make relationships with these people. And there's a lot of benefits to that. Yes, you'll get on better clients. Yes, at the end of the year when they go in for that big review meeting and they're like, oh, what do people think about Brianna? And everybody will have a personal idea of who you are, what you stand for, and a personal relationship with you. And while this is a small detail and a small thing, and it seems really intangible, you really can't codify how valuable it is to have all of those people in a room on your team. And like I said, this doesn't take a lot of work. You go around the office for 30 minutes, once a week, twice a week. You do that over the course of a year, that's like 50 times you've walked around the office. And that kind of thing adds up. And pretty soon you'll know everybody in there. And if you're on the audit side, it's not just audit, it's also tax. You know, even though the tax people might not be in there to make that final determination, you'd be surprised. When you first start at companies, it's really hard to tell who calls the shots and who runs the show. So I don't want you just sticking to your little group and community of banking audit or your little group of community of tax or whatever. I want you sort of getting outside the box. I want everyone to kind of know who you are, and I want you to build some actual relationships with a lot of the people there. I want you to be in charge of an event. And I say an event, meaning you have to do at least one in my book, or you know, you really didn't follow this plan. But I would do multiple, and I did all of these and more. They don't have to be firm sanctioned. I don't care if, you know, you don't need to get permission for anything in this list, okay? You know, you might think, oh, if I want to get promoted, you know, I need to go and I need to ask if I can plan this event and I need to ask if I can be in charge of this. And I think you should do that in certain situations. But if they say no and there's nothing available, screw it. You're planning your own event. I planned an event where we had like 15 people that went rock climbing. I planned another event where we had 25 people that went to a happy hour and played, what is that thing where you, trivia. Yeah, trivia. And the funny thing is, I planned that event, and I didn't even realize on the same day as that event, I actually had to fly out of the state. And so I planned that event, and I was like, crap, I'm going to have to cancel this event. It's not even firm sanction. I'm totally screwed. And I said, you know what? I'm just going to tell everybody I'm still showing up. And everybody, I'm not even kidding, 25 people showed up to this trivia night. And I didn't even go. I texted everybody when I was there. I was like, hey, I realized I had to go on this client trip last minute. Sorry, blah, blah, blah. But they had a great night, you know, and it kind of added like a little extra weird thing that the guy who planned the whole thing didn't even show up. But I got 25 people to go to that thing. And yeah, everybody paid for their own drinks and whatnot, but it was a lot of fun, and they all, you know, played trivia, and they were going to do it anyway, a lot of them. CPE at the company, you know, you might think, oh, I can't do CPE. I'm just a first year. I'm just a second year. Well, when the interns come in, put together a little lunch and learn, a little breakfast and learn about accounts payable. Put something together about bank reconciliations. I don't care what you do. Come up with it, pitch it to HR, pitch it to the partner, and just be like, yeah, I'm just going to have the interns come in. It's going to be 45 minutes in the morning. They're going to get in around 7:30. I'm going to buy some bagels, and everybody's going to sit around and do this. That's going to be huge. We also did a canoeing trip. We had about 10 people that went to that one. We had spouses at that one too, so it's 20 or something. We did shotgun shooting, which was a lot of fun until this like really sketchy guy, he looked like he was from that duck show. I don't remember what that's called. That one, the hillbilly one I'm from Oklahoma, so I can say these things. That hillbilly one from Discovery Channel. Yeah, one of those kind of guys started feeling up on the intern and said, well, when you shoot the gun, honey, you need to keep your hips like this. So, you know, everything was fine until he started doing that. But that was an awesome event. We actually did that a number of times during busy season. It was like, okay, we'll get done at 8. We'll go shoot some shotguns. And it's just, you know, it's Florida, I guess. Somebody's probably listening to this in like New York and they're like, wow, this kid is just a redneck. I'm not a redneck. Come on, guys. But no, I mean, any of these events, you know, whatever makes sense in your area, it doesn't have to be expensive. It doesn't have to be something that's organized by the firm. Most of this wasn't organized by the firm. It was just stuff that we did. Okay. Here is something when you're planning out your strategy. You know, this goes, and we'll talk a little bit more about this at the end about getting noticed, but you need to tell people your goals. So one of the biggest challenges people have when they've been working at a company for a few years is they're like, yeah, you know, I feel like I've been doing so many good things. I've been working so hard. I've been getting a lot of my hours in. You know, I planned that canoeing event. You know, I planned that thing for the interns. I did recruiting with the firm. And you know, but then they didn't get promoted or they didn't get the raise or the rating that they wanted. And so much of the time, nobody knows what you want. You can't just assume that people are thinking, oh yeah, everybody wants to get promoted, because that's not true. If everybody wanted to get promoted, they would put into action some of the very simple things in a webinar like this. They would actually show up for a webinar like this. But the fact is, most people don't want to be promoted. Most people are too lazy. They're too full of excuses. They just want to sort of float through and meander through the firm and meander through life, and they'll get there when they get there and whatever, whatever. That is most people. And not surprisingly, HR, the managing partners, your partner, all those people think you might be that person unless you start to tell them and show them what's important to you. And the conversation goes a little bit like this. You know, you walk in for maybe a little checkup with HR, maybe end of busy season, mid-busy season, just to make sure everything's okay with you or whatever. And, you know, you say something like, listen, I'm totally excited about being at the firm. Like, it's everything that I hoped for so far. Like, I've really been enjoying it. You know, I've really been enjoying the clients I've been on. You know, that client I was on a few weeks ago, I learned so much. And working with Jim, you know, he was a great manager. Like, he really took the time to walk through everything. So I've been really enjoying it here. And they're like, oh, great, blah, blah, blah. And then at some point you say, but, you know, I wanted to talk about my goals with you a little bit. And one of the things I wanted to talk to you about was promotion. You know I'm early on here, and I'm really at this point, I'm honestly just trying to learn about the firm, learn about the company. You know, I'm trying to learn the basics of accounting, auditing, or tax. But it is important to me to be on the right track. And I just wanted to talk a little bit with you. You know, I'm thinking about trying to get promoted a year early. I'd like to really aim for that 2-year mark. And what do you think I would have to do to put myself in that position? You know, I'm the kind of guy that I don't want something unless I earn it, but I want to kind of figure out what I need to do to earn it. So I figured I would ask you, if you've ever seen anybody get promoted early in the past, what did they do? What did they do to really catch your eye? Were they really involved with the clients? Did they do a lot of, you know, lunch and learns? Did they just get really high ratings? What are the most important things you think about when you think about, hey, is this person ready for promotion? And you just put that question out there. And this is an amazing thing, because they're going to list out 2 or 3 things, and you're going to write that down in your little notepad. And you're going to look at those 2 or 3 things, and you are going to absolutely hammer those 2 or 3 things into the freaking ground. And when you do, and then at the end of the year, you nailed those 3 things they said into the ground, and you sort of put that in your little review, and we'll talk about this at the end about how to present this to people. What are they going to say? They said, oh yeah, if someone's ready for promotion, they need to have really high ratings, they need to have you know, they need to have passed the CPA exam, and they need to have done some other stuff outside the firm, like recruiting events. They need to have led a lunch and learn. They need to have done a proposal, whatever, whatever. And then you did all those things. What are they going to say? You know, it's never good to demand a promotion, but I mean, in the right way, you communicate these things and then they give it to you. It's really not that complicated. But if you never have these conversations 6, 8 months in advance, then if you try to have the conversations, oh my gosh, the month or two before, it's kind of scrambling. You want to plant the seed and watch it grow. And that takes time. And so 6 to 8 months before you go and you have that conversation, then you check up with them and you tell them about it. You're like, I was so happy about my rating on that last job. And, it was nice because I felt a little nervous about it because I was trying to get involved with planning a lunch and learn. And I knew that was taking up some of my time, but I was really happy to be able to balance that lunch and learn with the client work and get a high rating and be involved in my extracurricular activities. And you're just talking about your job, blah, 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 BSing to HR. And in the meantime, you're also showing them that, hey, I listened to you. Not only did I listen to you, but I took action on what you said, and I'm putting myself in a position where you trust, respect me, and you believe I'm ready for the next step. And that's really how you do it. And I have those conversations with HR and then the other applicable parties. For me, it was a partner who was also my coach or mentor, who was a manager level. And then I also ended up having to speak to who was kind of one of the managing partners, because everybody told me, oh no, if you want to get promoted, then that's really not something that this guy allows anymore. Back in the day, before 2008 or whatever, he was open to it, but now no way. And so I was like, well, screw it, I'm going to talk to him about it. And I had a 5-minute meeting with him where I just went through that exact same thing that I told you a few minutes ago, where I just told him about my goal and what did I need to do for him to say, you know what, I don't believe that people should get promoted early, but Andrew, man, he really dominated. And I mean, we got to do it. We got to promote him. He's ready, and I want to use him out there on my jobs. And I asked him, I said, how can I be in a position where you'll say that at the end of this year? And he told me some stuff, and I just wrote it down, and I just dominated it. So that's what you need to do. You need to talk to these people. And I'm telling you right now, here's the biggest piece of advice I have with all this. This needs to be behind closed doors, one-on-one. If you're in the conference room and there's 5 people in there, no. Stop it. Don't talk about your goals of getting promoted early. Don't ask what you need to do to get promoted early. None of that. This is a private, behind closed doors conversation between you and the people that make decisions about your career advancement. If you start bringing it out in the air and airing all your dirty laundry and making statements, good or bad, about this whole thing, it's going to blow up in your face because people just start to get uncomfortable. I want all of these conversations behind closed doors. In fact, your coworkers and everything, I don't even want you talking to them about the fact that you're really gaming to get promoted early. I want you to be friendly with them. I want you to be nice with them. I don't want you to lie to them. But if you're talking about these things, I want it to be with these people behind closed doors. Okay, so I want you to create a list to track your progress. You can do like in a little Excel spreadsheet, something that you know you're going to keep. And I want you to have a plan. And I want you to do at least one, quote, thing per month. And it's really anything that's above the basic client service. I mean, just to give you some examples, campus recruiting, right? Are you going out and helping at the career fair, stand there and pitch the firm? Are you doing trainings for interns or other first years? Are you leading an event, community service event, CPE, whatever? Are you on a proposal? Are you contributing to the firm's knowledge? A lot of firms have, like, if you create a great template or a great spreadsheet or whatever, you can submit that to the firm's Office of Knowledge and Development or whatever, and they'll give you like a little credit, like, oh, Brianna, congratulations, you have submitted this thing, and they love it, they eat that up. So I want you to do at least one of these per month, and if you can't do something that is, quote, sanctioned by the firm, then do another one of those things. Lead one of those events on your own. Get everybody out to canoeing or get everybody out to shotgun shooting. I don't care. But I need to see at least one per month. And the reason for that is because at the end of the year, that's 12. And 12, that number doesn't always sound like a lot, but when you say, hey, I have done all my basic client work, everything. I have gotten high ratings, and on top of that, I did 12 extracurricular, extra firm activities to help grow the firm, build relationships with other people, and promote, stronger, more intelligent, more efficient workforce, whatever. And that is going to be huge. 12 is a huge number when you get to the end of the year in the ratings, because most people have 0. Most people have 0 and didn't get that good of ratings. So most people didn't do anything, didn't get that good of ratings. You got great ratings, and on top of that, you did 12 things. That's nuts. These people, they're going to go crazy for you in there. And I mean, you can put everybody in a position where they're going to be like reading off all of the stuff you did, and it's so much that it gets kind of like, okay, do we really have to read this whole thing, or can we just all agree that he got a 1 rating and he got promoted? Okay, and you want people to be in that position. You want it to be so many that it's almost kind of grueling. And when everybody else has 0 or maybe 1 little thing they did, like, oh, I attended the career fair. Oh, great. But if you've got 12, you're just crushing it. Okay, so now I want to talk a little bit about high ratings, because we're talking about all these extracurricular activities, and that's super important. But the fact is, if you don't get those high ratings, and it doesn't need to be 100%. So, if on every job you get rated 9 out of 10 or 8 out of 10 or whatever, that's okay. You don't need to have 10 out of 10 every single time. In fact, you kind of don't want that. Because if you get a 10 out of 10 on every single job, it's kind of like, did people actually put any thought into this? Or did they just sort of say 10, 10, 10, 10, 10, and they kind of just cold ticked it, just kind of like went through the process, didn't really think about it. You want there to be like some 8, some 9, some 10, or whatever the rating system is. That way it seems more legitimate. So you don't want it to be 100% perfect. But the way you can guarantee, and I mean guarantee, that every single one of them is going to be good is by just using this simple principle. And it's by asking for feedback at least twice per week. And that sounds like a lot. And I'm not telling you that you need to schedule a meeting with a calendar invite and go into a conference room and say, you need to tell me what I'm doing good and bad. No, that's not what I'm talking about. What I want you to do is at least twice per week when you're alone. And I don't want you to do this in front of everybody. This is another one of those things, alone. When you're walking out to get lunch, when you're walking to the car at the end of the day, you're an associate, let's say, and you're walking with your senior, and you say, hey, Mike, is there anything else I can do to help you out? I feel like I've got a good handle on my stuff. I'm really enjoying it. And thanks for walking through that thing with cash for me today. That helped me so much. But is there anything else I can do to help you out? Is there anything else you'd like to see from me? And you're like, oh, maybe this little thing here and there. Okay, that's 1. You're done. Okay, that was 1 for the week. Maybe do that on like a Tuesday, right? And then on Friday, you can say, hey, I got through AP, I got through cash, I got through debt. How do you feel that I've done so far? Are there other things that you want me to get into? Do you feel like I got through those things in the right amount of time? I just want to get a little bit of feedback so that way next week when we come back, I can really sort of put things in gear in the right areas. What are your thoughts? And just ask them a couple questions about your performance. Again, this can be something that doesn't take more than an elevator ride. It doesn't need to be this long, drawn-out thing, but I would do that. That's going to be huge because it gives you time to correct mistakes, and we all make mistakes. But if in the first week of an engagement you realize that you're working way too slow, well, then you can work on it when you get home, or you can work on it early the next morning, and you can start to pick up the pace a bit. And that is going to be hugely important, because if you ask for feedback in the middle of the engagement, and then you fix whatever they say, if they ever gave you a hint of something, they're not going to be very direct because people don't like to be very direct, but if they give you a hint of something that you can do better, you need to just pound that sucker into the ground. Whatever it is, you need to be on it 100%. You need to be all over that one thing. Even if some other things aren't doing as well, but that one thing, you just need to dominate it. And then at the end, they're going to remember that. They're going to be like, oh, I told him about this. And then he just went 100% nuts on that thing. And that's what they're going to remember when they write your review. And so it's super important to ask for feedback. Don't make it annoying. Don't be that kind of person that is like asking all the time. Don't be that person that's asking in front of other people. But when it's right, when you're alone, just get a quick vibe for how they're doing with you and what you could do to be better. And hey, is there anything I can help you out with? But take off your plate maybe. That's going to be huge. I mean, that right there, if people did that, that would instantly take your ratings from a 5 or a 6 out of 10 to a 7 to a 9 out of 10. I mean, just instantly right there, just by implementing that little principle. You need to ask for special projects. When you're on your engagement, that is something that a lot of people don't do. When you're a first year, you may not get to do something like a debt memo or the purchase accounting because the company bought another company. But you need to ask if you can be involved, because the truth is a lot of times your senior or your manager has already done it and really doesn't want to do it again. So if you can come in a little early, stay a little late, get your stuff done, and at the end of a week you finished most of your work, 80%, 70%, And then you could be like, hey, I was really hoping I could help you out with that purchase accounting. I probably, I'm just new to the firm, so I'm probably not gonna be able to do it all on my own, but I'd really love to learn it, and I'd love to really give a good crack at it and then be able to sort of sit down with you at the end of the day, or maybe even sooner, because I don't want to waste time on it, and get your feedback on how I'm doing and get things going in the right direction. If I could take even a little bit off your plate, it'd be great for you, because you could not have to do as much of it, and then great for me, because this is something I really want to learn, so that way I can do it again in the future. That's going to be huge. And then also, you want to ask for special projects that aren't directly related to the audit, tax, consulting work. Like, hey, they're probably talking about a new proposal that they are working on, and you're like, hey, I'm not trying to push or anything, but that seems like so much fun, and I know right now I'm pretty early on in my career, but down the line, I know I'd really like to be involved with proposals. So, hey, if you guys need someone to edit a document, just word proof it or something, I'd be more than happy to do that. Somebody to make copies, just so I can learn a little bit about the whole process. If they're planning a training, you could even say that too. Like, hey, is there any way I could help you with that training? Like, I'm happy to just pass out paperwork on the day of. I'm happy to make copies the day of. I'm happy to pick up bagels. I just would love to see how you're planning it on the back end. So that way, if I ever decide I want to do that in the future, I'll have the ability to do that. And if when you go in and ask for these opportunities, you have to do it at the right time. Like, you have to do it when A, that person is happy, and B, when they're happy with you, when they feel like you're dominating, you're on top of your work, you just killed it. And I always like to ask for these things right after I got my whole list together of all the crap I've been just dominating in the database and the work paper file. I've been banging out this, and this. I've been just knocking it out. And at the very end, I'm like, hey, I also heard, thanks for going through that with me. I really appreciate it. Hey, I heard you talking about that training earlier today. Is there any way I can help you out with that? Because I just think that's so cool, and I'd love to be involved with that in the future. And, a lot of this is true. It's not, the truth is you do want to spend more of your 2,000-hour work year on training, special projects, proposals, than you do on some of the nitty-gritty detailed work. I mean, everybody not everybody, but a lot of people want to do that. And so you're not lying, you're not being manipulative. This is something that you'd like to spend more time on. If you can get any little shred of experience now, it's going to go a long way. The next thing I think a lot of people just don't do, and it's so sad, because you'd think, that this just comes naturally to people. You're working at a company, you're working at a business, and these are people that are obviously very similar to you. They're like-minded, they're working at the same company. You gotta ask these people about themselves. And I know I said, you walk around the office and everything, but the people that you're on your jobs with and that you're working closely with, you need to, client and team member of the company, you need to know everything about that person. And I don't mean getting creepy on day one, going down some weird list, but as it comes up in conversation, I want you to know how many kids they have. What's their family life? Are they happily married, or is this thing on the brink of divorce? What are their career goals? Are they somebody like you that's looking to dominate, someone you can learn from? Or are they just sort of going through the motions, could get fired any year? Or have they passed the CPA exam? What are their life dreams? Do they want to travel? Do they want to live in another country? Do they really just want to own their own business? What is it that they want to do that's exciting to them? And when you get to know someone on this level and you ask all these things about them, and I typically like to ask it when I'm alone with the person. It's a lot easier. People open up a lot more when it's a one-on-one rather than 3 people in the room, 4 people in the room, 5 people in the room. So when we're walking to lunch or whatever the case may be, I always just try to strike up that little conversation, see where they're going. From that point forward, every time I see them, I always know to check up and say, oh, how is your son doing with that new school, blah, 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 or whatever the case may be. I mean, there's one woman I remember, I babysat her kid. And, that's kind of like a weird thing. He's like a little guy. I'm a guy. Guys don't normally babysit. But apparently they had a babysitter. I think I'd met her kid before and her husband and everything at a party or something like that for the firm. And, she asked me at the last minute. And, of course, I said, yeah, that'd be great. And the kid was great. But I was somebody that had that kind of a relationship with her. And people knew that. And I had that kind of relationship with a lot of people. And I knew that about a lot of people. And again, at the end of the day, what you have to get promoted is consensus about the kind of person that you are. And one of the best ways to do that is just to be friends with almost everybody at the firm. Here's the last one that, I don't really think is that controversial, but I get a lot of hate from this. Whatever I write for Going Concern, I guess pretty much if you write for Going Concern, you get a bunch of hate. But, you know, I got into work almost every single day around 7:30. And I did that also when I lived in Miami. And in Miami, I don't know what it is about Miami. You know, there's a little bit of a Latin cultural influence there. And I guess things just get started later in the day. I mean, no joke. Some people would roll in like 9:45, 10 a.m. I was like, that's insane. Like, I've already been working like 3 hours, you know. But I always got in early. And you can get a lot more done when you get in early. There's a lot of studies on this. A lot of very successful people do get up early. But the biggest thing it does is it totally game changes the perception about you. Try to get in every day at 7:30 in the morning. That's like an hour before anybody else, at least, maybe an hour and a half before everybody else. And I dare that person to write a bad review about you. I dare it. How could they possibly do it when you were getting in an hour and a half before them? You've already been working for an hour and they just got in. I mean, how could they possibly give you a bad review? You're putting them in a position where it would be almost uncomfortable for them to complain about the amount that you've tried and the amount of effort you put in, because every single day you bring it more than they do. And, you know, that wasn't originally why I did it. I'm just a morning person, but it made a huge difference. And the perception that it gave me of how hard I worked, the amount of output I had, the amount of commitment I had to the company and the job and the client, off the charts. There's really nothing that topped it. And, you know, yeah, could you get promoted and not come in early? Yeah, you can. But why bother? I mean, you wanna seal the deal on this baby. You don't want to leave it up to chance. And the only way I know to do that is to cover all of your bases. And this one was huge. So the last thing I want to talk about before we start to get into questions, and I'm going to give something away at the end. If you guys will fill out a little survey from me, there's going to be a giveaway for a $100 Amazon gift card, and we're going to do the link in a second. But the last thing I want to talk about is getting credit for all of this. You know, that's obvious. That's one of the hardest things. Is so many people do a lot of great work. They do okay work, right? They do maybe they're in the top 25%. But they could be in the top 10% if they would actually just get noticed for everything. And I see that happen all the time. And the way I found my way around this was I put together what I called a summary of contributions. So at my firm, you know, we had written detailed reviews, and that was already in my HR file, and that was already part of the consideration. But I went ahead and said, you know what, I'm going to do more than that. I'm going to put together a 4 to 5 page document. The first page was a cover page. All it had was the logo, and it said summary of contributions, logo of the firm. Second page was a summary, about 1 to 2 paragraphs talking about my year, reflecting on all the wonderful things that I'd done and how grateful I was to have the experience to work for such a great firm. And then 3 to 5 was on those pages 3, 4, and 5, was 3 to 4 paragraphs, and each paragraph had like a photo next to it. And each paragraph was describing something that I did throughout the year. Remember what I said? 1 per month. That's about 12 things. Well, hey, if you got 3 pages, you know, and you got 4 things on each page, that's about 12 things. And so you got a paragraph on the left describing what you did. Maybe you went on some recruiting event to, you know, the University of Alabama, and you helped recruit students. Maybe you also did a lunch and learn. Maybe you also did a client proposal. Maybe you also submitted something for knowledge, or whatever the case may be. And I just had that for 3 or 4 pages. And each one, I put a little picture of it, and then I put a little description of it. And to be honest with you, probably nobody read the thing. I mean, I don't think anybody went through and said, oh my gosh, this is so cool, I read it. But you know what? I don't think anybody else submitted that when they were going up for review. I don't think anybody else did. And if they did, they certainly didn't have photos. They certainly didn't have a cover page. They certainly didn't have a 5-page PDF. And you put that on top of my already high ratings and reviews from being on the job, and it was a slaughter. I mean, there was nobody that competed. I mean, I wasn't in those meetings, so I don't know the full details, but I can only imagine. And I'm not saying it to be cocky. I think this is just sort of, you know, if you want to put these people in a position where you have to show that you earned it, you're not going to go out there and scream, give me a promotion, I deserve it. No, you don't do that. You work hard, you document it, you share it, your goals, and you share your success with the appropriate people, and it happens. And this is the whole key to getting the credit. And if everybody already knows you, and then they get into the meeting that day and they hear about how high your ratings were, and then they hear about this document you put together about all the stuff you did in addition, and they know you, and they've got a good feeling about you, everybody in the room, boom. That's how it happens, and that's how you just put everybody in a position where they really couldn't say no to your promotion. And the summary of contributions, just to make sure we're clear, it included everything above and beyond client service or your basic work. So if you're an accountant at a private company and you're reconciling the books every month, that doesn't go on the summary of contributions. If you helped lead an IT implementation, or you helped, transition a new person from another department, or something that is kind of in addition to what you were originally hired for, you can put that on there. I shared it with HR and my coach only. I did absolutely not give this to anybody else that I worked alongside. I didn't give this to, my head partner. I told my coach, told HR, they shared it with everybody that they needed to in those sort of end of the year annual review meetings. And that's really the best way to go about it. I was sort of stealth. Like, I think people knew that I was pretty good, but I don't think they knew I was sort of doing this much work. And I don't think anybody would have known that I did as much work as I did if I wouldn't have put together a summary of contributions. I mean, nobody's sitting around tracking all day. Oh, Andrew went to a recruiting event. Oh, Andrew led this canoeing thing. Oh, Andrew led a lunch and learn. I mean, nobody does that. The only way they're going to know is if you tell them and you do it in the right way. Okay, so Deanna is going to go ahead and throw a link in the chat for a quick survey. And we're going to draw from there for someone to win a $100 Amazon gift card. So it's just a very quick survey. It's for the bean counter to get a little bit more information about you guys so I can help tailor the content and all of the materials and the webinars to better suit your guys' needs. So please fill that out. It would really help me a lot. Again, the link is going to be in the chat. And we're going to talk a little bit about questions now. A lot of people have been typing them in as I've been going through this. Deanna is going to help me read some of them off, and I'm excited about it. If you have any questions, please go ahead and throw them in the chat if you haven't already. Again, it's one of my favorite topics to talk about, so I'm excited to see what you guys think.
Yeah, and hey, let me ask just someone, any of you, to confirm that you do see the link in the chat room. I just want to make sure that it's there. I mean, I have posted it. I just want to get a confirmation. Okay, terrific. Thank you. Nobody else needs to type it in. All right, terrific. So for the questions, let's start off with one that kind of revolves around if you think the strategy is consistent across all sizes of firms or maybe differ. So, like, for example, the strategy at a big four firm versus smaller firms where, it's a bit of a tighter community. Do you think at smaller firms that people could take offense to the process, you stepping outside of your role and maybe then make life a bit harder for you instead of rewarding you for the actions?
I guess the answer is yes and no. So let me explain what I mean by that. Yes, you do have to handle things differently, but I don't really care if a few other people get upset and you're at a small firm. I really don't. And let me tell you why. If your coworkers or maybe people that are slightly above you are upset, but the people that run and own the company are over the moon, love you, and are totally happy with you, I'll take that every day of the week. And I'm not trying to trash on other people. There are going to be bitter people. There are going to be people that are angry, and there are going to be people that resent you. That happened to me, and I worked at a big four firm. It's inescapable. I talked about having good relationships with everybody, and that's true. I did have good relationships with a lot of people. But there were literally people that despised me because of the way that I went about this. And I don't think that had anything to do with me. I mean, like I said before, I was never out there, tooting my own horn. And, I'm doing that on this webinar to show you what I did. But if you were to go back and watch me over those 2 years, it was all in the darkness. Like, yeah, I'd be leading this event. Yeah, I'd be helping out with this community service event. But I was communicating those things with my coach and with HR and with my partner behind closed doors. I was saying, yeah, I wanted to get promoted behind closed doors. So, people will resent you. That's inescapable. But the general principles, if you're at a small firm, are exactly the same. And I would do a lot of these same things, even if you're at a small firm. I think it's easier to get recognized at a small firm because you can reach out and touch the owner. And the cool thing about a small firm is that you don't have to really prove to a lot of people how committed to the company you are and how much work you've done. You just have to do it with a few people, and that makes it a little bit easier. Yeah, if there's a few bad apples that resent you and whatnot, that's fine, but make sure that you don't do anything wrong to provoke that in them. Don't rub anything in their face. Be the grateful and be the classy individual who, yeah, I win, but I work hard. I talk to people in the appropriate manner. I do it behind closed doors. I never gloat. And, yeah, people will be upset, but that's just because they're bitter and miserable. And, that's their problem, I'm afraid to say. There were people like that when I was there, but, for all I know, they could still be an associate. I mean, I don't know. And it will happen. It's inescapable. But, again, I would just focus on what you can control and do the right things and be humble about it, and I think you'll be fine.
Okay, great. We have a few questions around, the situation if you receive bad feedback or if you have a low rating. Okay, if you make a mistake, what do you do kind of to rectify that or kind of turn things around?
The first question you have to ask yourself is why. And, you're going to have to go with the assumption that you did something wrong. I'm telling you that right off the bat. And the reason why you have to go with that assumption is because if you didn't do anything wrong and you're just going to tell yourself, oh, this senior or this manager didn't like me. If you're going to say that, well, then there's nothing you can do to fix it. So why don't you just, stop your whole game plan now? I want you to get in the mindset of you did something to contribute to getting that bad rating and review, which means that next time you can do something to ensure that that does not happen. When you start to blame people for things, then it paralyzes you. And I say that knowing that there are a lot of people out there that are not nice. And I say that knowing there are a lot of people out there that do give bad ratings and reviews even though you did good work. It does happen. But there's something you can do to make it better. And, if you have one bad review, it's okay. But what happens to a lot of people is they get one bad review and then they get bitter, they start blaming other people, and then it leads to a string of bad reviews. And what you really need to do is figure out, why did it happen? What did I do to contribute to it? Was I asking for feedback? When I got my feedback halfway through the engagement, was I doing everything I could to rectify the problems that were going on, fix it, and move forward? And look, I'm just a guy on a webinar. I'm just a guy out here putting out some information and advice. This is a question that you have to answer for yourself, and you have to be honest with yourself when you go home and you ask yourself, what did I do? What could I do better? And if you don't, and you make up an excuse, that's only going to hurt you. It's not going to hurt me. It's not going to hurt that person that gave you a review. You really need to look at yourself and say, what could I have done better? Did I ask for feedback? Did I implement changes? The good news is that if you do that early on, let's say it's 2 or 3 years to get promoted, if you do that in your first 6 months, totally cool. You've got plenty of time to make it up. And the first year you're at the firm, you can make some of those mistakes. But if you're trying to get promoted the second year, you really need to turn it up and be on your A game. So if you've had some of those bad reviews your first year, maybe you get a 2 rating, maybe you get a 3 rating, it's okay. You can turn that around in the next year, but just make sure you figure out what's going on. And I'm going to just tell you right now, it's probably something that you're doing. Again, if anybody has a specific question that they want me to cover, you can feel free to email me. I just put my email up about this if you've got a story or something that happened with more details information. But that's the general way I would handle it. What did I do to contribute to this problem, and what can I do to ensure it doesn't happen next time?
Right. Okay. What if, despite all your work, you're still not promoted? What do you do?
Well, I think, like I said before, it's 95%. I believe that it's 95% what the person does and 5% what they didn't do. I would be shocked if there's someone on this webinar right now that went through all of the steps that I did, got a high rating that I went through in this webinar, that got a high rating on all or most of the jobs they were on, never had any major dark marks, like any really terrible reviews, never, cursed out the partner or anything like that. And then let's say they didn't get promoted, but didn't get one of the higher level of bonuses, one of the higher level of raises. I would be shocked if that happened. And the reason I'm shocked is because most people, they don't do anything. I mean, most people work probably 3 to 4 hours a day, to be honest. I mean, in my experience, most people don't even work a full day. So, most people don't put in that much effort. So if you went through all this, I would be surprised if, okay, you didn't get the promotion, but did you get basically all the same effects of the promotion, the raises and the bonuses? And if you didn't get the raises and the bonuses, and you didn't get the promotion, then I got to ask you, are you really being honest with yourself? And if you are, and if you answer, yes, I'm being honest with myself, I went through all these steps, I didn't get a bonus, I didn't get a raise, I didn't get a promotion, then you may be at one of the very few companies that, you need to leave from. I mean, there are some small firms that have poor management that don't take care of their employees. It does happen. And if that were an office of a larger firm or something like that. And yes, there are people that do fall into that scenario. And if that's the case, then you need to quit and you need to move somewhere else. Only you can answer that based on everything that you know. And if you're really doing all that you can and you're really on your A game and you're really a grateful employee for being there and you're crushing it for them and you're getting all these good ratings and reviews and doing all this extracurricular stuff and you're one of the top people there, and you're still not getting recognized for that, yeah, there is a point where you need to say, okay, is this really the best firm for me? But before you get to that stage, I'm going to really make sure that I'm not blaming the firm when I'm coming short on what I want to, on what I need to do.
Okay, great. We had a couple of questions about like if this before your full-time opportunity. So one is, can you implement this type of strategy as an intern? And also, if you're still in school, you still have a year left in school, you utilize the same techniques, or are there some unique techniques that you can use to really, push your reputation inside a firm?
Yeah, great questions. And the answer is yes, you can implement some of these things if you're still in school or if you're an intern. The expectations are going to be far lower on you. So we'll start with intern first. With an intern, you should be taking most of the advice in here and implementing it exactly the same. The only differences are that you're definitely not going to get on any proposals. You're definitely not going to have the ability to run any firm-sanctioned events. Like, you're not going to have some of those higher-level responsibilities. But yeah, you need to be doing basically everything else in here. And that's not with the goal of getting promoted, but with the goal of getting a full-time offer. So I would stick to the same principles and go through it if you're an intern, and I think that's great. If you are still in school, the best thing you can do to raise your profile and reputation at the firm is to help out the firm in any way you can. Help them out with campus recruiting at your school. I used to tell the recruiters, I'd be like, hey, so-and-so is up and coming. She's phenomenal, or he's phenomenal. You really need to consider interviewing them for the summer leadership conference or for an internship. If there were any firm events, any promotion parties, any end of the year busy season parties, any holiday parties, I went to all that stuff when I still had a year of school left, but there was I wasn't starting a full-time job for a year. I went to all of that. If there was a firm event, I was there. I think I missed one event, and there was like 7 or 8 in the year and a half before I started, and I was still in school. So I went to almost everything I could. I kept in touch with the recruiters, and I always tried to do it with the idea that, how can I help them? This shouldn't be about me. I've got my offer. They're going to pay me. How can I help them? How can I help the efforts that they're putting out there? I didn't ask them at that stage, hey, can we go out for a cup of coffee and talk? I didn't do any of that because I already had the job locked in, and I felt like that would be taking up some of their time. I just tried to do things that I knew were 100% helping the firm, helping HR, all that kind of stuff.
Okay, and yet the next questions may be related, all right? And so we had a series of questions about, what if you don't have the experience that a lot of firms say they're looking for. So we're talking about entry-level opportunities, but if someone just hasn't had maybe an accounting internship or a prior accounting experience, but they have a CPA license and they have a bookkeeper experience or even accounts payable experience, how do you approach it in that situation? Any differently?
Yeah, I think you need to really make sure that you are honing your technical skills. I mean, because here's the thing, I don't think technical skills are what determine promotion, but if you have really bad technical skills, they will prevent you from getting promoted. So if you're like one of the really good technical people, that's really no reason for you to get promoted. And most people, I think, would kind of look at it that way. Even if they don't tell you that, I think that's how they look at it. But if your technical skills are atrocious because you never had any experience or anything, then you need to really work on that. Like, you need to read the firm documentation. You need to be really taking a lot of notes when you talk to people on the engagements. You need to not be wasting their time. You need to show that you're giving in a good effort. That coming in at 7:30 in the morning is going to be huge for you, because when you get in early like that, even if you're struggling a little bit, like, nobody can say you didn't try. Nobody can say you didn't put in a big attempt. And at the end of the day, that is going to be huge when you go into feedback. Because if they feel like you're not technically good and they feel like you're not really trying, or you have some sort of entitlement, maybe you're a little older, like a non-traditional person, that's going to count against you. But you need to spend more time than, you know, a younger person that's had an internship and a summer leadership learning the technical skills you do. There are generally a lot of resources and information at the firms. There's, you know, recorded webinars and whatnot. I spent a lot of time, to be honest with you, looking at other people's work, a lot of time, because I was just like, what did they do here? What were they doing here? How did they set up this work paper? Where are they linking to? Why are they doing that? What are they thinking? I did a lot of that, and I think the best way I learned was from looking at other people's stuff, copying like the principles of what they were doing without, like, you know, literally copying and pasting it. And that was how I learned a ton. So yeah, you need to spend a lot of time on that if you don't have good relevant work experience. But let me tell you what, if you had no internship and you had no prior work experience and you came in January to work in public accounting, and you know, let's say the firm promotes in summer, right? So the first summer is your first year, okay, you're not going to get promoted. The second summer, yeah, you can totally get promoted. If you're committed to the company, if you're doing all that you can to learn their methodology, tax, audit, consulting, and you're really doing all of these steps, absolutely. I've seen people get promoted in a year and a half. It can happen even with zero experience going in.
All right, what about special tips for maintaining a good relationship with your mentor or coach?
I think the biggest thing is to make their job easy. And when you go through these steps, like, they're going to love you because your performance reflects on them. One part of how they are rated, reviewed, given bonuses, raises, and promotions is, hey, how are your mentees doing? If you are dominating it, if you're just hitting the ball out of the park, that looks really good on them. So that's the first thing I would say, is go through these steps. I would also say be proactive about having meetings with them. Like, I would typically like to meet with them every quarter at least. But if I was in the office stopping by, I would sort of stop by and say hello to them. And if I had a little thing to talk to them about, I would talk to them about it. I also always went into the meetings with them fully prepared. There was no question about what were we going to talk about because I already emailed a little 5 to 8 bullet point agenda beforehand. And I went in and I took notes, and whatever we talked about in terms of action items or follow-up points, I followed up on and I took action on. And I think if you do that, I'll tell you what, one of the biggest things I didn't mention in this webinar, but is so lacking in the professional world, like, I don't know what it is, but this one word, if you can be this one word, then you will stand out and you'll beat 90% of other people. And that one word is just dependable. If you can be someone that shows up on time, that, you know, says they're going to follow up on stuff, follows up on stuff, says they're going to complete stuff at a certain time, complete stuff at a certain time, sets meetings on a regular basis to follow up with their coach. I mean, if you just do that, if you're just dependable and reliable, I mean, that's automatically you beat 90% of the people out there. So yeah, those are some things I would keep in mind when you're building that relationship with that coach. And I think a lot of it, you know, you might not be, I don't like the idea of being best friends with your coach personally. So be a little careful. Like, I think you want to have an appropriate relationship with them. I think you want to get along. But when you start to get into the friend zone, it makes it a little bit more challenging because you don't want them to feel, you don't want everybody else to perceive that they just like you because you're best friends. That kind of gets troublesome. So I wouldn't try to get too close with your coach. I try to have an appropriate professional relationship with them.
Okay. Now, what about for those who maybe, you know, open communication is not their first, I don't know, not one of their natural approaches to things. So someone who wrote that they love doing their work in a cubicle, and you know, interacting can be distracting. So a lot of what you've talked about is the relationship building. So how do you suggest someone approach it if they're, you know, if that's not their first inclination?
Start small. You got to start very small. I don't want you to get overwhelmed. I totally understand that. Look, I'm naturally a little bit extroverted. So, you know, if you're a little bit more introverted, or you do like being in your desk a little bit more, totally understand that. There's nothing wrong with that. And because you're that way, you're going to do a lot of things better than I do. And you're probably going to be a lot better technically. You're probably going to get a lot more work done. That's all phenomenal. And you need to play up those strengths. But you still need to build relationships. But I don't want you to maybe, if you don't want to go around, you know, every single week and talk to a bunch of people, that's totally fine. But I'm going to tell you to start small. And this is what I want you to do. It's the month of May right now. It's almost June. So in June, you've got 2 goals. The first goal is to walk around the office once and talk with a couple people. The second goal is going to be for you to knock off one of those other things I talked about, one of those quote events or something like that. Maybe go to help out with the summer leadership conference if it's coming up at your firm. Maybe help somebody plan recruiting for the fall. Maybe help lead a lunch and learn for the summer interns. Just one thing. So I'm only asking in the entire month of June that you do 2 things, just 2 things. When you do that, send me an email. Let me know how it goes, and I'm curious to hear, and we'll see if what maybe makes sense for July. But that's how I would start. I would start small if you have anxiety about these things, and I totally understand that because I had anxiety about them when I first started because I didn't know what the heck I was doing. Nobody really told me any of this stuff. Like a lot of it was trial and error, trying on my own, trying to figure it out. I didn't have a ton of good advice. I got a lot of bad advice. So I totally get the anxiety in the beginning, especially if you've never worked in an office before, and you tend to be a little bit more introverted. So nothing wrong with that at all. I think you can still totally go for the gold. But yeah, that would be my way to start.
Okay, this next one, I love the comment. Someone wrote that, Andrew, you're a monster at this. How did you stay focused day in and day out?
I think, when I was working at the firm, I always had the bigger picture in mind. Like, look, to be honest, every single day you go in, are you going to have a big win? No, you're not. There's 365 days in a year. You probably work about 200 of them. You're probably only going to have a few days of the year where it's just like, boom, like the whole thing came together and you nailed it, right? But the whole rest of the year, you can be building up for those opportunities. You can be building up with little client wins, little, doing a really good work paper that someone's going to review and be like, dang, this was just solid. And like someone at this level, they shouldn't have done it. And so when I was doing all the little things, all the tiny details, I saw it as, I'm not just doing this tiny detail to do this tiny detail. This is somehow fitting into the bigger picture. And for me, that's what motivated me and that's what got me excited. It got me excited to know that all these little pieces were coming together and I was building something big. And yeah, I didn't get to realize that for a year or 2 years, but every day, that's what I went in with the mindset of is, what can I do to contribute to build a little piece of this bigger picture that's going to come together at the end and be this really beautiful painting of my whole year story. And so that's how I thought about it.
Okay, this is the last one, and it's really related to when I asked before about lack of experience. There's a couple questions specifically about not getting a promotion, but really getting into a good accounting job in the first place. And that's a really big topic, so maybe beyond this. But, I just want to get your perspective. And did you see others, have success and landing a good accounting job without having, some relevant or applicable experience?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, everybody's situation is so different. That's why I started the Bean Counter, because a lot of people go to small schools, or a lot of people go to big schools, but they work 40 hours a week and they can't make it to all the events. And so, whatever your situation is, like, you need to figure out what's going on. But I see people winning and getting the top positions, in the market, or the top positions based on what they want every single day. I mean, and it's crazy. Like, it doesn't even start, like, it's not just, September, October, that's the hiring time. No. I see this every single week. I get emails about people just nailing it out there, getting the job they wanted, talking to the firms, getting interviews. Yeah, I see it all the time. I mean, whatever your personal challenges are that you're facing, feel free to email me and ask me about them specifically. But I really have yet to find something that I'm like, oh no, this is insurmountable. This person's just doomed. You can absolutely take steps to nail it. I mean, when I went to school, there weren't very many firms that were recruiting, and so I had to reach out to some of those firms on my own. I had to sneak into a career fair at another university. I mean, there were a lot of things I did that, it wasn't easy. It wasn't like I had this big successful Beta Alpha Psi chapter and 45 firms looking to hire 200 people. It did not happen that way. It was like a lot worse odds than that. And so, yeah, I think there's so much opportunity out there. And especially considering the fact that, and I realized this at a young age, that most other people aren't trying that hard. They're really not trying that hard. And so if you watch this webinar, you put this stuff into action, you read some of the other stuff on the Bean Counter, you put that stuff into action, the stuff you'll read over at Accounting Fly on the blog and other, other stuff. You're some of the few people that are out there trying to learn information and trying to put that into action. So, feel good about yourself in that regard, and know that automatically that puts you in a tier of, okay, you've taken the first step. You're ahead of everybody else. Now you just need to keep down that path, and I think you'll be surprised about how much success you'll find.
Okay, so during that last question, 2 more came in. They're both related, though. Do you have time for one more, Andrew?
Absolutely. Let's do it.
Okay, cool. All right. This was really, I think, in response to when you were saying, how do you do it? How do you keep focused? So a couple people are curious about, with having such a focused approach and being so involved, how do you balance some things that go beyond your personal life? Doctor's appointments, relationships, kids, whatever it may be. How do you keep that balance?
Yeah. I think for me, like, my first priority is my wife and my personal relationship with her. And, that is the beginning of my family. So that's certainly like at the forefront of my mind. And, I think that should be the case for anybody. Look, all of this stuff we're talking about here, the bean counter, jobs, public accounting, it's small potatoes when you compare it to your actual life. Like, I don't really care about all this stuff relative to my life with my wife, with my family, with all the things I want to do. Like, this is just one piece of the bigger picture for me. And I think you should definitely look at it that way for you. I look at it as a kind of a game. I don't think that it was the most important thing I've ever done was getting promoted early in public accounting. The most important thing I ever done was getting hired by the Big Four. It's not. It's definitely not. And so I think a lot of people fail because they get so wrapped up and they think, oh my gosh, this is so important. This is such a big thing. And to be honest, it's really not. I mean, I meet so many people nowadays that are 40, 50 years old that started working in the big 8 firms or whatever, and that's just such a small thing in their life now. Down the road, everything seems small. And so sometimes in the moment, you need to draw yourself in and say, okay, I want to do this. I want to be the kind of person that takes control of my life, takes action steps to be better, to make more money, to have a better career, to save money, to pay off debt, to retire early, to be a wealthy individual and successful individual for my family. I want to do all those things. At the same time, I'm not going to be stupid and sacrifice my family or sacrifice a doctor's appointment for a company. Look, these companies are great. There's a lot of phenomenal companies out there, but they'll fire you in a heartbeat if they need to. And it's not because they don't like you. It's because, hey, if the company's going down or if there's a 2008 end of the world crisis, then yeah, there'll be layoffs. And they look at you that way, and you need to look at them that way. You're here. You're trying to do the best you can. You want to have a great relationship. You want to dominate. But at the end of the day, this is just one piece of your larger puzzle in life. And I wouldn't take it too seriously.
Okay. Awesome. Awesome. All right. Andrew, thank you once again. And everybody on the call. So Andrew's going to be back in about a month with another topic with us. We're going to continue the series because he's just great, isn't he? So thanks, Andrew. And thanks to all y'all for sticking with us. These questions were fantastic. I appreciate hearing your thoughts and what's on your mind. That's great. If just as a heads up on what's coming up over the next few weeks. So next week we have Yvonne Harris with us again. It's a repeat of a session that we found really valuable if you're in an internship on how to make the most of that. She has a really well thought out plan of how to approach that internship. And as you heard from Andrew, a lot of it is about really thinking it through and putting together a plan and thinking about it early enough so that you put down actions you need to accomplish, right? So anyway, so that would be great next week if you're starting an internship. After that, we have someone from the IRS who's going to talk about government opportunities. So that'll be really good. Then we're going to talk about networking. And then after that, Andrew, it will be time for Andrew to be back here. So y'all stay engaged with us over the summer, and help us out. I'd like to ask you to help share this with some of your friends. During the summer months, we have some of our common connections to the universities kind of out of pocket. So, if you think that some of your friends or coworkers would like it, share it. That'd be great. That'd be great. And we hope that you'll join us. So thanks. Andrew, anything you want to say?
That's it, Deanna. Thanks for having me on. And if anybody has any personal questions, more specific, you can always email me, andrew@thebeancounter.com. And thanks for coming around. I really enjoyed doing this. And yeah, if you have any recommendations for future topics, feel free to let me know.
Awesome. Terrific. Thanks, everybody.